There was a scary moment right here in Times Square overnight. Hundreds running and hiding when they heard a loud bang, thinking it was an active shooter, but really it was a motorcycle that backfired. Gio Benitez is outside here in Times Square with the very latest. Good morning, Gio.
Michael, good morning. So many were enjoying a night out here in the crossroads of the world, Times Square, but suddenly they heard that sound and it caused total panic. This morning, it's a sign of the times. Watch as a typical evening in Times Square turns into panic.
All of a sudden I heard like this kind of muffled pop and I was like, oh, what was that?
That pop, a motorcycle backfiring, but hundreds of people thought they heard gunfire and they run for their lives. The chaos captured at multiple angles on live stream from EarthCam webcams.
I had about 1 or 2 seconds to like think, oh, is this really happening? And I just started booking it.
It happened just before 10 p.m. last night, some taking cover inside stores and restaurants. This image taken inside the Disney store.
I watched like 5 or 6 people get trampled, and it was like pretty much a stampede of people just sprinting as fast as they could. They were knocking over tables, knocking over the chairs.
The NYPD reassuring the public that there was no active shooter, tweeting, "Please don't panic, the Times Square area is very safe." It was a similar false alarm outside this mall in Utah. Here, a sign had fallen, making a large bang. The resulting skirmish, yet another symptom of a nation on edge. And here in Times Square, we just learned this morning that 6 people were taken to the hospital last night. They had minor injuries, but it's yet another reminder that you have to be thinking about exit plans.
I don't know what to do.
A family's home left in shambles. Now detectives in Wayne County, fire investigators, and the FBI are trying to figure out who's behind an explosion that is also being treated as a hate crime.
This is just terrible. Early this morning, an arsonist blew up the home of an interracial couple, and racial slurs were spray painted on their property.
It's sickening to do this to somebody's home and not even know if they're home or not, you know? We could have been in there.
Angela Fraze is heartbroken and frightened, not knowing where to go or what to think after an arsonist blew up her home around 12:45 this morning. The place she's called home for 23 years with her husband, Brad, reduced to pieces, most of their belongings destroyed.
I got sick twice. That's what happened. It was like, this didn't just happen. I don't understand it.
The back of it is on fire and it's just melting off.
A neighbor captured video of flames shooting out of the house on the normally peaceful Spruce Street in the village of Sterling. And when the fire was out, another startling discovery. Detectives believe the arsonist also spray painted the interracial couple's garage with racial slurs, which News 5 has blurred.
We're still doing this, you know? This hatred stuff, like, come on. Can't everybody get along?
Anti-Trump posters in Patchogue. The message? Death camps for Trump supporters. News 12's Sherry Einhorn has that story.
They're definitely shocking.
I don't like it.
And to some folks here in Patchogue, they're disturbing and inappropriate.
Definitely crosses the line.
But to others, these anti-Trump supporter posters are simply an expression of free speech.
I've been a Republican committeeman since Ronald Reagan was president. But that's protected speech.
Here's what they're all talking about. Posters depicting a skeleton wearing a suit and a red tie. The words, quote, "death camps for Trump supporters" now appear.
22 people died!
Tempers flaring at the El Paso Walmart Memorial even before the president's visit today. Warner's telling a woman who came wearing a MAGA hat it was disrespectful.
That hat is hate. Okay. That hat is hate.
A large number of protesters turned out near a hospital the president visited.
He put a target on us, and now all these people are dead.
Becky Canales and her husband say they're angered by the president's divisive rhetoric.
He doesn't care. If he cared, he would do something about it, but he doesn't.
President Trump and First Lady Melania met with victims and first responders. A front-page editorial in the El Paso Times attacked the president for characterizing this border town as one of the most dangerous cities in his State of the Union speech earlier this year.
As night fell on Saturday, Chinese police once again fired tear gas and clashed with opposition activists in Hong Kong. Riot police on the Kowloon Peninsula charged onto the streets after dark, with hundreds of officers pushing back jeering crowds. The protests against an extradition bill have become the most serious political crisis in the city since it was returned to China by the British 22 years ago. A fire broke out on the steps of the Tsim Sha Tsui police station as it was besieged by protesters. Throughout the evening in Kowloon, police confronted protesters who retreated and regrouped, and some were detained. The protests against a proposed bill allowing people to be extradited to stand trial in mainland China have grown increasingly violent since June.
Iranian President Rouhani lashing out over crippling economic sanctions, saying ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz may not be safe, and warning that a war with Iran could be, quote, the mother of all wars.
For decades, the INF Treaty has been a landmark in arms control. It eliminated an entire category of nuclear weapons, making us all safer. Today, the INF Treaty ceases to exist because Russia has deployed the SSC-8 missile system. The new Russian missiles are nuclear capable, mobile, and hard to detect. They can reach European cities with only minutes of warning time. And they lower the threshold for the use of nuclear weapons in armed conflict.
The US tested a new intercontinental ballistic missile Tuesday. It was launched from an Air Force base in Southern California and sailed over the Pacific Ocean, landing eventually at an atoll almost 7,000 kilometers away. Then, just hours later, the Russian military tested its own ICBM-2.
The escalating trade battle between the U.S. and China is rocking investors around the world. Market futures predict a rebound on Wall Street today after the worst day of the year for stocks. Major indices lost around 3% or
well,
more
forgetting
yesterday.
about the markets for a second, we know that the overall U.S. economy was already slowing down. Manufacturing activity at a 3-year low. Just yesterday, we got some information out of the service sector. It's starting to feel the pinch as well. You add this on top of it, and now we have to say, what are the Trump tariffs targeting? They are targeting consumer goods that we use every day.
We're looking at an alarming drop in exports right there,
Yeah,
17%.
Yeah, so we have imports are down, of course, but also exports, so that hurts manufacturing. But if you look at this next round of tariffs that was announced last week to go into effect on September 1st, laptops, cell phones, toys, clothing, all these things could rise in price because those tariffs might get passed along to consumers. Right now, consumers are doing really pretty well. If these prices start to inch up, will they spend as freely? The big concern among economists is that they don't, and that would slow down growth even more in the second half
The
of
U.S.
this
Department of Agriculture wants to change who qualifies for food stamps. The new proposal could cause millions of people to lose their benefits. It's the latest attempt by the Trump administration to cut back on the program.
The Agriculture Department expects the new rules would cut more than 3 million people from SNAP.
About 36 million people participate in SNAP. Anti-hunger advocates say this change will hurt the poorest Americans.
1,100 store closures happened in a single day as Charlotte Russe filed for bankruptcy. Then Family Dollar and Abercrombie & Fitch announced their downsizing. That means so far this year, 5,000 stores across our country are now out of business.
Shoppers are changing, and legacy retailers need to pick up on that trend, and they haven't.
Gymboree and Payless couldn't keep up. Those now bankrupt. Then you've got JCPenney and Victoria's Secret, both closing hundreds of their stores. Some are calling this a retail apocalypse. while some are simply calling it change
In a
bound to
controversial
happen.
world first, Spanish scientists say they've managed to create a human-monkey hybrid embryo. They claim they're looking for ways to grow transplantable organs for humans. They took a monkey embryo and deleted genes responsible for creating organs. Then they were replaced with human stem cells, which could be transformed into any kind of tissue and organ. The experiment was aborted, it must be said, after 2 weeks. But if completed, the scientists claim human organs would have grown inside the monkey, potentially then being transplantable into a human body. We put the ethics of all that up for debate.
In Sin City, it's the insect invasion, putting on a show no one can escape.
They popped up out of nowhere.
A 24/7 onslaught of grasshoppers that really sticks with you.
What the heck, dude? You're all covered in locusts. I know. You're just covered in them, dude.
For many, the first impression felt downright biblical. A migrating horde of bugs so big, you could even see them from space.